Margaret Preston, president of Power Over Parkinsons, and today, in conjunction with our Pop Profile series, we have Larry Gifford, PD Avengers President, and also a person with Parkinson's disease. Larry, thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, it's my honor. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you spending some time and sharing a little bit about your world, as well as PD Avengers. So if you're ready, let's get started.
Let's do this.
Very good. Well, Larry, share with our listeners a little bit about your journey with Parkinson's, particularly around the diagnosing stage, how it occurred, what were your symptoms, and what process you went through.
Sure. I didn't know it, but I had been gathering symptoms for about 8 years before I went to go see a doctor about them. And it started with my gait and sort of a clompy walk. And so my wife and I'd be like hiking in the woods, it's supposed to be romantic, and she'd hear clomp, clomp, clomp. She's like, "Can you pick up your feet?" I'm like, "I think I am, but I don't know what's going on."
Yeah.
And so we just thought, well, maybe I'm just overweight and out of shape. And, I'd never been 35 or 40 before. So maybe this is just getting older. I don't know. And then it was like, I felt weaker on my right side. And so I was unable to do things. And then suddenly I realized I was typing with my left hand and my right hand was just sitting there. And I used to be proficient note taker, and I couldn't read my notes anymore. And I lost my sense of smell and even my desire to cook. And I loved to cook and barbecue and do all this stuff, but it just wasn't appealing to me. And I used to play Frisbee with my son a lot. And so we were pretty good. We had a good Frisbee. We had the thing going, and I couldn't release it on time anymore. So it's going all over the place. I'm like, this is so weird. And I was just having trouble, like I'd bump into tables or I'd bump through a doorway, and it's like my spatial relations were off. And then I started to get a tremor. And that's when my son goes, "Hey, Dad, why is your hand shaking so bad?" And I was holding like a glass of water like this, and it was going like this, and it was spilling out. And I said, "I don't know, son." He goes, "Well, maybe you got to go to the doctor."
Yeah.
Like, that's probably a good idea. I was never a big fan of doctors until now.
Wise child, though.
Yeah, I raised him well.
Yes.
So went to my GP, and she's like, "Yeah, we got something neurological going on here, but I don't know what it is. So we're going to send you to a neurologist." And they sent me to an MS specialist, thinking it could be MS because I was in the right age range for that. And so the MS specialist did all the tests, and he's like, "Yeah, you don't have MS." He goes, "But I think you might have Parkinson's." So he actually put me on levodopa right then. And then it was another 6 months until I got to see the Parkinson specialist.
Sure.
And the levodopa was working. And he did all the tests, and he's like, "Yeah, you probably have Parkinson's."
Yeah.
And I said, "Probably. And isn't there a test that we can do to just like firm up that diagnosis?" He goes,
Yeah.
"Well, there's one test we could do if you really want to. It's called an autopsy." Like, well,
you weren't quite ready for that stage yet.
Yeah, I'll take your word for it, Doc. And so that's how it happened. After the first meeting with the MS specialist, I'd gone there alone. So I got out of that meeting and called my wife, and I said, "I don't know what to make of this, but I don't have MS." She goes, "Good." I said, "But they think I have Parkinson's." She's like, "What?" I'm like, "I don't know what it is." So so then we had to consult Dr. Google.
Of course.
It's never good. But we did a lot of reading on it. But that time, it's like it's a hard thing to do, to be told that.
Yes.
And you begin to think back, like, what did I do to myself, and how did I make this happen? And well, maybe I can just will it away, or if I ignore it, it'll go away. And so I battled this booger for about 8 months by myself, just feeling sorry for myself and doing things, probably drinking more than I should, and depression and apathy and all those good things. And then I heard Dr. Dorsey from the Rochester University. It was on the Michael J. Fox podcast. And he said, people with Parkinson's don't start sharing their stories we'll never raise enough awareness to raise enough money to do enough research to do anything about this disease.
Yeah.
And that just, it's like, that was life-changing for me. It's just
Yeah.
hearing that. Because I'm a storyteller. I've been in radio for 30 years. It's what I do. And if I'm not willing to tell my story, and that's what I do for a living, how can I expect anybody else to tell theirs? So that's when we launched the podcast, When Life Gives You Parkinson. And that was the start of my advocacy.
So tell us, what year were you diagnosed, and what year, how long after did you start that podcast, When Life Gives You Parkinson's?
Yeah, so the year I was diagnosed, it was August of 2017.
Okay.
And I started the podcast exactly 1 year later.
That's fantastic. That's a quick turnaround, an impressive turnaround. So,
well, yeah, I'm always impressed. Like I was in a meeting the other day and the guy goes, yeah, I just got diagnosed earlier this year. And I'm like, oh, wow, good for you. Like,
yeah.
that's hard. It's hard to accept it and start going to meetings and all that stuff.
Yep, you've got to kind of go through the process. Sure.
You got to mourn your pre-diagnosis, like, because it is sort of I call it my lifelong frenemy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the friend who's going to be walking with you for quite a while. But I think you've touched on something that probably resonates with a lot of folks, just kind of taking that time to go through some of the emotions, come out of it, and maybe do some good. So it's a great story.
There's still those days where you're like, good Lord, can't I just have a day to myself?
Yeah. Can I just be alone for once?
Right.
Sure. Well, let me touch on, as I noted, you're the president of PD Avengers, a global alliance aimed at ending Parkinson's, which is fantastic. However, Parkinson's recently became a partner to PD Avengers, and we're thrilled about that. So tell us about the genesis. You talked about starting your podcast. Tell us about the genesis of starting PD Avengers.
Well, I mean, it all started with this great book. I don't know if you've read it or not, called Ending Parkinson's Disease.
Yes.
And it was written by Ray Dorsey, Todd Shear, who's with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, Boz Bloom, and Michael Okun. And it's such a great book for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's probably the most comprehensive history of the evolution of Parkinson's disease that I've ever read. Yeah. And then it goes on to give you a prescription for action. They're contending that Parkinson's is primarily a man-made disease. And if man made it, man can unmake it. With the Industrial Revolution and toxins and, the herbicides and the pesticides that we use on our foods and, the concussions and like all these things we're doing to ourselves. And if you think about, less than 10% of the people that are diagnosed with Parkinson's are diagnosed because of a genealogical connection. It's where it's passed down from generation to generation.
Right.
The other 90% can involve some sort of genetics. There are genes that they're discovering that will give you a predisposition to Parkinson's, like LRRK2 was discovered, and there's some other ones. But then there's also just your general genetic makeup. We all have, if you do a full genetic makeover on your body, then you'll find you have gene what do they call malfunctions, or just sort of some of them are a little off kilter.
Yeah.
I have 184,000 gene mutations when they ran mine. And so what that does is that kind of loads the gun for Parkinson's. And then when you hit the right environmental trigger, it could be stress. It could be a football concussion. It could be exposure to paraquat. It could be any number of things. Once those two things connect, and the environment pulls the trigger for Parkinson's. That's why not everybody exposed to paraquat gets it, because not everybody has the same, genetic mutations.
Yes.
And so learning about that was really fascinating. And I got a call from a woman who runs the Cure Parkinson's Trust in the UK, Helen. And we become good friends. And she goes, Larry, what do people with Parkinson's think of this book? I said, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I love it.
Yeah.
I said, but why don't we invite some folks to a Zoom call? This was right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so we invited some of our favorite people that we like to talk to a book club meeting, and we told them to read this book, and we gave them 3 weeks. And if you needed a copy, I'd buy it for them. And we had about 12 people show up, but they didn't know who else was invited. And so they showed up and they started going, "This is really cool." It's like I feel like I'm meeting superheroes or something. And somebody goes, "Yeah, we're like the Avengers," and somebody goes, "No, we're the PD Avengers." And the meeting hadn't even started yet.
How natural.
And so we went about talking about the book and what we liked, what resonated with us. We invited each author to come talk to our group. And Boz was like one of the last ones. And Boz goes, "Oh, this is really good, but it's a prescription for action. And you guys have been here for like 7 weeks just talking."
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah. So that was
here comes the work.
Yeah, so you got to do some work.
Yeah.
And so we went about forming a group, and we didn't have it like a legal or anything. It was just sort of like this. Let's see what it comes to. And we had a big webinar, invited tons of people to it, and we invited the leaders of probably 40 different Parkinson's organizations to a Zoom call, where a lot of them had not met before. And we're like, "Listen, here's what we want to do. We want to end Parkinson's disease. And we want to grow this organization where crazy idea, we're not going to raise money. We're going to raise awareness. We're going to raise a ruckus. We're going to raise the bar. We're going to raise funds for your organizations. We're going to make sure the government is aware that they need to raise their investment into research." That's the types of things we're going to raise. We're going to bring amplify your campaigns, and together we can do this. And it's not just people with Parkinson's, but it's their families and their friends and their doctors and the organizations they belong to, their team. Like everybody that's on their team should register. We need pharmacists. We need everybody, because everybody has a superpower. And so we have 4,300 members approximately right now. We have now 79 different organizations that are signed up and have agreed to once a year. Well, we meet every other month, but once a year, we're organizing a united campaign globally, where it's a sort of a think global, act local feel. So this first year, we're creating a logo in cooperation with a creative agency in Brooklyn and with PD Avengers, and we're taking inspiration from people with Parkinson's, whether it's art or music or whatever, to create a logo for World Parkinson's Day 2022 that everybody can use regardless of what they're going to be promoting for that day.
Sure.
So that'll just become our symbol.
Yeah.
And hopefully reusable over the course of time, and then we can evolve it with themes and whatnot. And so everybody's like signed off, agreed. They know this is the deal, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And now they're collaborating with each other on a number of other events, which they weren't doing as much before.
Yeah.
And so it's just grown from there. And then Tim Haig, who was the first winner of Amazing Race Canada with his son after he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. And Sonia Mather, who is had Parkinson's for about 22 years. Was a family physician, and she's a very active member of the Parkinson's community. The three of us established the PD Avengers officially earlier this year in Canada. Wonderful. So now we've got all the nonprofit status, and more than anything, we're like, we have 4,000 members, and if somebody does something in our name, we're going to be responsible for that.
Right. You got to go through the process and making sure you've set the foundation securely, and then go out into the world and have these wonderful overarching worldwide themes for.
And so it's been really early on. We've seen some great success. We sent 35,000 red letters to the White House, to Joe Biden, saying, "Hey, we need 3 things from you. We need you to extend the Medicare coverage of telemedicine permanently. We need you to convince Congress to raise the budget for research into Parkinson's by 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, the global or the US burden for Parkinson's disease every year is about $58 billion.
Mm-hmm.
And they invest about $275 million in research. It's upside down, it's backwards.
Yeah.
And then we also asked them to ban paraquat,
Mm-hmm.
trichloroethylene,
Mm-hmm.
and another one that was finally banned just a month ago. That was like a cousin to the toxic chemicals that they were using in warfare in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
So, think of the different mustard gases and sarin gases and stuff. And
Sure.
so it's in that family.
Mm-hmm.
And people were using it on crops like it was no tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so we see that as a victory to get one of those. Now, paraquat is in our targets. The Michael J. Fox Foundation has stepped up
Mm-hmm.
and has joined a lawsuit
Mm-hmm.
and are suing the EPA.
Yeah.
Because the EPA just gave them didn't stop the renewal of the paraquat, which a spoonful of paraquat will kill a human being.
Right.
And we put about 8 million pounds of it on our foods every year.
Mm. Yeah. This is why we need to band together.
Yes.
And be loud and obnoxious, to your point.
Right. Be an ever-present, uncomfortable presence for the people that make those decisions.
We'll share with our listeners the pillars that PD Avengers are built on.
So there's 3 pillars.
Yep.
Wellness, because we know how important exercise is, and just being fit and well and mentally together, whether you're reading
Mm-hmm.
books or doing Sudoku or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's all sorts of wellness. And for us, that also includes the equity and access to pharmaceuticals,
Yes.
to therapists, to diagnoses.
Yeah.
30% of the world does not have access to levodopa.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And then advocacy, which is, whether it's a red letter campaign or it's marching down the street or it's doing an interview on TV or radio or a great video cast or whatever it is, getting the message out there repeatedly.
Yes.
And anybody can do that. You can write an op-ed to your newspaper about it. We're gonna be launching a campaign where everybody contacts their UN representative to get the UN to recognize World Parkinson's Day in April, because by the way, Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurological condition in the world. And then so wellness, advocacy, and research, because we're not going to end Parkinson's without research. And we need the people with Parkinson's to be able to advocate and to be able to do research. So we need them to be well. So they all kind of tie into each other.
Yeah. Well, those are 3 prongs that are sure to lead to success, because those are the areas in which I think anybody, even to your point at the local level, can execute on. So that's fantastic. Tell us, how do you reconcile? There's these Parkinson's facts that are hard to reconcile. How do you reconcile the fact that the disease was discovered 200 years ago? We're still using first-line treatment 50 years ago using levodopa. So how do you reconcile how do you make that jive? Because that's a long time using the same treatment. And why hasn't it changed? How do you reconcile?
Well, I think I blame us. We have told our friends and our family and ourselves that Parkinson's won't kill you. And so there's no urgency to it. So that's a big part of what the PD Avengers is doing, is trying to put urgency back into the conversation. We're trying to light a fire. And that's the role we can play, because it affects us or it affects your family. And you are up close and personal with it, and that it's not just, well, it won't kill you, you just die with it. Like, it's not that simple. And in fact, every 2.5 minutes in the world, somebody dies from Parkinson's. Every country keeps stats on this.
Yes.
So I don't know where that came from or where that started, but that put us back, because cancer will kill you. The ALS, is going to take it quick. MS, worse than Parkinson's. So we've put ourselves fifth in line as far as neurological conditions is concerned.
Yes.
And we need to change the narrative. Like,
Yeah.
this is a burden on society. $56 billion a year, it's going to double over the course of the next 20 years. And like, it is better for us to invest in research today to be cheaper than what it's going to do to the world economy. We're not going to have enough nurses. We're not going to have enough treatments. We're not going to have enough, like, there's going to be too many people with neurological conditions. I mean, neurological conditions right now are the #1 killer in the world. And it's only getting worse, and they're connected. Most likely. I mean, I was talking to a Harvard doctor just the other day, and he studies the brain from the neurological disease perspective. He goes, you look at Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is caused by misfolding proteins in your brain. Well, so is Parkinson's. Different proteins, but like, once we solve one of these issues, it's going to give us a map to solve some of the others.
Yes.
So we need to invest in that. And so it's hard to reconcile. A 50-year-old drug, what other disease is using a 50-year-old drug?
Right.
None.
Right.
There's got to be something better.
I do like your perspective, though, because sometimes it takes a little bit of ownership in this world, right, to move mountains. So I do like the fact that we, as people who have loved ones with Parkinson's or those with the disease themselves, need to take a little ownership and say, you know what, I've got to be louder. I'm not so different from the other folks with neurological diseases. I'm just as important, and Parkinson's is just as important. And so that takes a lot of acceptance, I know, but sometimes you got to get there.
Is it worse to die quick or to suffer, silently suffer internally, where you can no longer communicate, where you're locked in your body and getting worse and worse and worse for 20, 30 years? Which is worse? I kind of want to go quick. Like, I'd rather not be tortured for the rest of my life.
Yeah. But saying those things will create the urgency. So I can appreciate that. Well, Larry, you talked to us a little bit about PD Avengers, the pillars. Where do you hope to see PD Avengers in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, hopefully it's over.
Hopefully you're out of business like the Michael J. Fox Foundation, right?
Exactly. We really want to work on making connections and having a global influence from a political and governmental standpoint. We are in talks with the WHO, and I'm on the committee for Parkinson's that they had gathered earlier this year. They did a workshop, 2-day workshop, 30 people around the world, like these smartest scientists and neurologists that you've ever met, and me. I don't.
But they need you.
I was the only person there with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
I only got there because I asked Dr. Dorsey to sneak me into the back. And they're like, oh, Dr. Gifford, you're here. I'm like, yes, Dr. Gifford.
Yes. That's fantastic.
But what we're doing is we're writing a technical brief for the UN to give its member states on how they need to be addressing Parkinson's in every country in the world. And so that's an important piece, and to already be involved in that, just over a year old as an organization, is really important. We're working with the authors of Ending Parkinson's Disease, and we're working with the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and all the big foundations around the world. We are in contact with, and we're collaborating with them. And it's in 5 years, we should have more money for research. We should be farther along. Like, we will be, I believe we will have at least a couple of biomarkers available to us in 5 years. And we'll be in probably phase 1, phase 2 trials of some possible treatments or to stop Parkinson's. But we need the biomarkers before we can test our theories, because if we can't measure Parkinson's, we don't know how well we're stopping it.
Yeah.
And the whole goal ultimately is to, cure is a tricky word, because, there's not many things that have been cured in this world. We've just learned to keep them from onsetting.
Mhm.
Like polio is not cured. We just know how to keep it from activating in your body.
Correct.
And so we want to do the same thing with Parkinson's. So the next generation doesn't have to deal with it. Like I'm probably not going to benefit a whole lot if in 10 to 15 years they learn how to stop Parkinson's, because I'm going to be too far gone.
Yeah.
We're doing this for the next generation.
Yeah.
We just need this to stop.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you've touched on the thousands of PD Avengers already within a year signed up to be a part of this global alliance. How does one become a PD Avenger?
Well, you know, it's a very hard test.
A very thorough assessment.
Oh, yes, yes. Body search cavity and every, no, it's, you just go to the website, pdavengers.com. And it'll pop up right there. Join us.
Okay.
And you can fill out an application with your name, your city, your state, your country. And, you know, there's a few other questions. How'd you find out about us? And then once you're signed up, you'll instantly get a email saying, hey, thanks for joining us. And then about once a month, we send out what we call an action alert. And this is an update on some of the things that we're doing. And it gives you some things that you can probably do from your home or that are maybe nearby you that are happening, where you can become more more of an advocate, or maybe it's some wellness stuff or some an opportunity to do some research. So we're working with like VST Global right now, LSVT Global, and they've got a great project going on now where they need people who have Parkinson's to participate in a study where you read things into your phone. Even if the worse your voice is, the better. Like, because you know, some people have really affected voices, and if you have an accent, that's fine as long as you can read English. And then they're going to train all these devices to understand us, and then the devices will then translate it into understandable words for whoever we're talking to. So it's a real convenient tool.
Yeah, that's great. So it sounds like anybody, and I know this from experience, but I just want to call out, anybody can become a PD Avenger. I don't want
My
folks to
son
think
is a PD Avenger.
It's not a PD exclusive club. Anybody with or without Parkinson's can be a PD Avenger, because everyone can take action.
We are PWP led, but we are open to everybody.
Fantastic. I want to call that out to our listeners. Well, there's so much. You just touched on one research project that's very exciting, but there's so much research being done in a multitude of research institutions. What excites you the most? Maybe name one or two research projects that are currently going on that are exciting to you.
Well, there are so many.
There are.
The Michael J. Fox Foundation has been doing their PPRI study for PPRI, right?
Yeah, PPR.
And they're doing these exhaustive tests, and they're learning so much about biomarkers and whatnot. And they just launched their second trial of that, and they're going to have like 3 times as many people involved now. So if you really want a body cavity search and a spinal tap and everything else, you can participate in that. And I think that's probably what I've read is that it's all open science. More things have come from that study, just as people pull it apart and look at the data, because it's so comprehensive. And more trials and research projects have come from that, because they're pushing it through the computer databases that look through data for different things, and they're like, hey, look at these anomalies and whatnot. So that's kind of exciting. But I talk to I like to talk to scientists, which can be difficult because they speak a whole different language. But I talked to this one scientist who believe they know how to put almost like the mitochondria, which is the battery in your cells in the brain. And the reason your brain cells are dying, your in the dopamine producing brain cells are dying, is because the battery is wearing out, because it's being attacked. by some other, by the alpha synuclein, and then the alpha synuclein folds. Now, we're not sure what order things happen, but we know that's happening. The alpha synuclein is folding and the mitochondria battery is turning off. Well, they've got a way to attract the alpha synuclein to like a dummy mitochondria and push them to the side to keep these mitochondria alive.
Yeah.
And they've reproduced it in the lab, like in test tubes and petri dishes. And then they're hoping to get that in the next 5 years into human trials.
Yeah. Wow.
Which would be amazing if we could just sort of block them off and like, oh no, you're in this line over here.
Yeah, to differentiate that.
And so and then the mitochondria live if they're not attacked by the alpha synuclein.
And then you have your dopamine.
Yeah. Which would be great.
Coming from a PWP himself, that would be great. Well, speaking of your status as a PWP, Larry, share with our listeners maybe a couple takeaways to your fellow, I would say, coworkers. So others with the disease, whether it's day-to-day inspiration or maybe it's motivation from a more global standpoint to keep people hopeful. What would you say, maybe one or two takeaways that you would give to people also living with the disease?
I see people every day that are making a difference without having to try too hard. It's a kind word to somebody. It's a phone call. It's an email. It's a how you doing? It's even just noticing things. Hey, you see your gait looks better today, or it's reaching out on a global scale and just saying, if some, like for instance, what I do, if I read an interesting article, I call that person up and I just, who's being interviewed, I find their number on the internet because it's usually widely available. And I know they want to talk because they're quoted in the paper or on the internet. And I said, hey, do you have a 15 minutes where I can pick your brain about this? I'm really interested in it. And everybody's willing to talk to you. So educate yourself and be curious. Parkinson's is hard work. It's a full-time job. And I would say, be easy on yourself. There's going to be days where you don't feel like exercising. That's okay. At least there's tomorrow. Get back on the horse and do it again. But don't just give up. There's always hope. And hope is what binds us. Hope is what binds the scientists to the neurologists, to our families, and to us. We all have hope for something. We have hope for a better tomorrow. We have hope for the end of the disease. We have hope that I'm going to feel better next hour than I do this hour. And so hope is really the driving force of the search for the cure.
And it ultimately, we found that it creates the community, right? It's what binds us. It's what creates the community. And then it creates a better environment to manage the disease when you have the community.
Yeah. And the next time something just doesn't go right, whether you fall or whether you break a dish or who knows what, you can trip over the dog, just laugh. Laughter's good. It's fine to cry too. You don't have to mask your emotions, but I laugh a lot.
That's fantastic.
I also started an improv troupe for people with Parkinson's.
Oh, cool.
So we
look forward to seeing that publicly very soon.
It's fun. Yes.
That's fantastic. I'd like to, Larry, peel back your friend who sits with you all the time, Parkinson. So we've talked so much about Parkinson's, PD Avengers. Tell us what you like to do on your free time. How do you spend your time away from PD Avengers?
Well, I have a full-time job on top of my full-time job.
Yes.
So I am the national director of talk radio.
Okay.
And I love audio. I love doing the podcast. And so that's my passion. I love hanging out with my family. We like to go on small hikes and go out to eat, to have a picnic or whatever. I like to barbecue and to smoke like some pork butt or some ribs or, whatever. And then, uh, you know, I play Lego every night with my son.
Okay.
And not only is it great bonding experience for us, and it's something that we can do together, it also helps my fine motor skills.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
not that everything has to tie back to Parkinson's, but you know, the more you use your stuff, the more you can do. Like the
Yep.
more you move, the more you can move.
Yeah. We have
Um,
a community member who is quite a Lego builder, 1,000-piece Lego kits and upwards. So, and
cool.
he sings the same song in terms of it being so helpful with fine motor skills, cognitive abilities. So, there's something to be said for having a little fun via Legos.
Yeah, and improv. I do improv
Yeah.
every week. We have
Mhm.
classes with improv experts,
Mhm.
and we're going to do a research project with that. But I just look forward to getting on stage and doing it. Like
Yeah.
we now have a theater, so we're going to be up, once a month we'll be up on the stage doing stuff. It's
Yeah.
cool
That's great. Yeah. Getting outside the comfort zone.
for sure.
That's
Yeah, but you
great.
know what? Like Parkinson's already puts me there every day, so I might as
Right.
well embrace it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Larry, that does it for me. I can't thank you enough for being part of our pop profile series with Over Parkinson's. And of course, I want to also note again that we are a partner with PD Avengers, and we're so excited to see what World Parkinson's Day looks like next April in 2022. So
Yeah, it's going to be
thank you for
great.
spending some time with us today. And for those listening, we'll certainly put the PD Avengers website on the end of this presentation so everyone can visit and become an Avenger. And we look forward to hearing from you all soon. Larry, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everybody.